Okay, welcome to Brains. My name is Kingsley Iboche. Today I'll be teaching you guys how to use the useContext and what useReducer to build an application. And there's a reason why we want to make use of the useContext. Actually, I want to teach you guys how to make use of the useContext because if you have been used to props drilling, the useContext helps us to prevent props drilling. Now the question is, what is props drilling? Props drilling is a process of passing data from one component to another, okay, using props. All right, it's a process of passing data from one component to another using props. So let's say we have a parent component, then we have a child, component. Let's say child 1. We have another child component. Let's say child 2. Then we have another component, child 3. Okay. Now what happens when I want to pass data, let's say my name, to child 3, so that child 3 will have access to my name. I will have to pass it down from child 1 to child 2 before it gets to child 3. So that means the data has to go through child 1, 2, and 3. With the help of useContext, we can actually avoid that. Okay, with the help of useContext, we can pass through the data to 3 directly without passing it through child 1, child 2, and child 3. So today I will teach you guys how to do that using useContext and the useReducer. It's going to be a long video, so get yourself prepared for it. So right now we just have this is our app component. Okay, now I've done this before, so that's why you see I commented all this. So I want to build this project again from scratch, and I want to show you guys how to use useContext and useReducer to build a simple project like a to-do application. So now right now we just I've imported my browser as router, then route, then from the React router DOM. Now I have my app component where I'm returning a GSS, which is just a div, and I have the router that is wrapping the navbar. Now I have the navbar prepared. Okay, I don't want us to take us through the stress of creating the navbar. Okay, so my navbar is ready from the previous project. So this is my navbar. All right, now in this navbar I used what called I made an active tab such that when you click the tab, it's going to make it look as if it's active. Okay, so I will not be doing that here because I've done it. I'll have to create a new video for that to teach you guys how to do that. Okay, that's a promise. I'll do that. Okay, so right now I've get this prepared. Okay, so so let's go to the app.js. So what we just have now is the navbar, and this becomes our app.js. So when we go to our browser now, I'll save and go to the browser. We'll go to our browser. You see, so in our browser, this is what we have. As you can see, in our browser we just have, okay, we have the navbar. We have, now when I click this, it becomes active. That's the work of what I did in the navbar. Okay, so you can see the route is changing, it's making it become active. Okay, so we just have just the navbar, and we'll be building the to-do app here. So this is the home, this is the add to do, this is the to-do list which we have not created, the components we have not created. So we'll just have a navbar ready, and we'll go on to start creating these components now. Okay, so the first thing I will start with the to-do context. That's what I will start with. Now because I already have I've done this project before, so I don't want to delete them. So what I will do, I'll be creating my new component by adding X to it. Okay, this was the previous ones, so by adding X to it. So the first thing I'll start with, I'll create a new component. I'll call this so to do. So I'll just add X to it, to do context. So .js, all right. Now, first thing you do, we have to import useReducer from React. Then we'll import create context. So this is what we use to create the context. Create context from React. Okay, so we'll need the useReducer hook, okay, to get our state and to set our to-do reducer as well. Okay, now I'll come back to that. Now this create context is what we use to create the context. So what we'll do is we'll export, because we're going to export it. So I like exporting my functions from the beginning. So I will export, now create a constant. We'll call it to-dos context. Then we'll use the create context that we are getting from React. So we'll make it empty, right? Make it empty. Now I'm using export because I'm exporting. You know what export and import does? If I do not use export, I cannot access it outside this file. Okay, this is just a module. And what is a module? A module is just a file that contains functions. All right, so if I do not export this, I'm not going to get access to it later. Okay, so and if I want to use it later, I have to import it, but it has to be what exported here. Okay, that's why I make use of what export. Now the next thing is let me quickly explain now the useReducer first before I continue. Now the useReducer, for those that have not made use of it before, okay, in the useReducer I will destructure some things from the hook. I'll destructure state and dispatch, okay, from useReducer. And useReducer itself has two parameters, which is the first one is the reducer itself, the reducer function, and the initial state. Okay, so this is the initial state. This is the reducer, the function. Okay, now this is dispatch. Now dispatch takes an action. An action is also, dispatch is the function that is used to dispatch an action in the useReducer. Okay, dispatch takes an object, an action, which is what? An object. Okay, it dispatches an action, which is an object, and an action is an object, like I said, which has property type and a payload. Now I'm just trying to explain what the useReducer hook entails. Okay, so it has a state, a dispatch. So dispatch takes a parameter, which is the action, and action is an object that takes the type and the payload. Okay, so now we use this dispatch to perform an action in the reducer function. Okay, and this is just the state. Okay, the state. Okay, instead of using use state, we just have what we call the initial state, which is the same thing as this state that we have here. So that's that. Let me take away these guys. So the first thing I will do now, or let me comment it. So the first thing I will do, I will create an initial state. So store it in the constant cost initial state. I want to build a to-do application. So the initial state will be an object that has an array of to-do list. So it will be empty, so there's nothing inside it. So the next thing I will do, I like creating my actions first. My actions. Now what kind of actions do we want to perform in the to-do list? The first thing is we would love to add to do. Now this way of writing is what we call the snake case. Okay, this is snake case. Okay, so you know camel case, you know Pascal case. This is called snake case. Now we set it. Now don't forget the action takes type and what payload. Now in this case, I'm creating the types of what action that will be carried. So the first type will be add to do. So I will use the same. Then the next type of action that will be carried will be remove to do. Okay, remove to do. Then the next one will be complete to do. So there should be a button that when you click it, it's going to perform an action to complete what the to do. So it's going to show you that okay, the to do has been what completed. That's a kind of a nice feature. But in this app, we're going to build it in a way that it's not just going to show you that it has been completed, but also the time that it was completed. Okay, so in this application we have the time that it was created and the time that it was completed. Okay, so now we've created the action, we've created our state. So what will be the next thing? Guess. Okay, the next thing should be the reducer. So I will say cost to do's reducer. Now the reducer takes two parameters. The first one is the state, and the second one is the action. All right, now we will now make use of what? Switch. Now switch should not be something that is new to you. Now switch is used instead of writing if else conditions. Okay, so instead of writing if x, we just make use of what? The switch. Okay, now so the switch here is going to take what we call the action dot what type. Now don't forget I said that action is what? Is an object. Can you remember? So now the switch takes the type of what? Of action. So you can see action is an object. So to get this type, it has to be what? Action dot type. So now it has what we call case. So for the first case, we want to check the type of action. Now if the action type of action is add to do, now if we just say add to do like this, it will not work. Why? Because that's not actually the type. Now this add to do is inside what? An object. So it has to be actions. In order to get it, it has to be actions dot add to do. Why? Because the add to do is the type, which is the type, is inside was an action, inside actions, which is what? An object. So to get it, access to it, we have to get access to this type. This type actually it has to be what? Actions dot add to do. Then that's how we got the type. Now the next thing is we'll now create our function. What do we want to do? If the type is, so we want to return an object. That's the first thing. We want to return an object. Now in that object, don't forget our initial state is here. Okay, this initial state is the same thing as this state. Do you get it now? This initial state is the same thing as what? As this state. So we want to return an object. In that object, we first of all have access to the state itself. Then don't forget that the state has a to-do list as a property. Do you get it? So we want to set, okay, so to-do list as a property, which is this. Now it has an array, so this array we want to work on now. Okay, so we've gotten the state, the old state, comma, then the property that is here. So now we want to add to this array. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to add to the array. So in order to do that, create an array. So we'll say we'll get the state again dot the to-do list. All right, does the to-do list, which is this. Now we want to add an object to it. So what we want to do, we want to add an object to this array. Okay, the first thing we want to return an object, which is the state. Then the state has what? This to-do list. Now we want to add an array to it. Okay, so it takes an array, actually it takes an array, which is the array. So we want to add an object to this array. Do you get it? So I'm using the rest operator to do all this. All right, so this state is, this to-do list is inside the state, so which I've done here. So we want to add an object. Now the object will have an ID. Now ID, all your to-do should have different IDs. So I'm not using UUID here. I want to use the date dot now. This will give us different values at different intervals. So this is okay. So I already have my ID. Then the to-do itself. Now the to-do will be the action dot payload. Okay, dot what payload. Now what I want to do is I want to be getting my I want to be setting the payload, the to-do property. I'll be adding what what I want to do actually is I'll be setting the payload property to what the to-do. That means the to-do that will be coming will be set to what the payload property will be taking what the to-do as what as a value. Do you get it now? So the payload property here will be taking what the to-do as a value. So when I say action dot payload, I should get what the to-do. Okay, don't forget I said action is an object. All right, so now as type and what payload. So I will be setting the property of this payload to what the value of this payload to be the to-do, right? So to access it, I will now say action dot payload. So that's what I'm doing here. Okay, so the next thing is I want to create a date. Now I want to have a date that it was created, so I would use new date. Sorry, new date. Then I want to convert it to local date string so that we can get the exact date. Okay, then time as well. I'll still do new date, but this time I'm getting the time from it, so I'll still use to local dates, local time string. Okay, now I want to also get, now I want to set a completed, is it completed? So as the initial state it will be false, right? Because we are just creating a new to do and adding it to the array. So the completed status should be what? False. Now I also want to add the time it was completed. So pay attention, completed time also will be what? Will be empty. Okay, so we'll need to have a button that when we click the completed when we click the complete button, it's going to set this to the time. So that's the idea. So completed time rather, sorry. So I think that will be all for this action.add to do. Okay, so that will be all. Now the next thing, the next case that I want to check is the next case we want to check is the remove actions. So the remove to do, so it has to be what? Actions, because it's inside the action, it's an action type. Okay, so inside the action, so actions dot remove to do. So we want to return, this time we are returning an object. So from the state, then we want to set the to do list. Now what we want to do, we want to what? Return an array that's, now in this case for the remove to do, we will need an ID. Okay, don't forget that each to do has what? An ID. Now we want to return an array in which the to do that we clicked or that we want to remove will not be part of what? That array. Do you get it now? We want to remove that particular array from the array that we have before. Okay, so we want to filter it out, so that means we'll need the ID. So what we'll do first is we'll use the filter method on the array that we have. So say state dot to do list dot filter. So using the filter method, we'll get the to do, then we'll do what? The to do dot ID. This will give us what? The ID of the to do. Okay, now we want to what? Now this is a negation sign. That means if it's not equal to this, we'll take it out, right? Now I'm using action.payload because why? I will be passing what? The to do. as a payload. Okay, so like what I explained here before. So here now we passing what the to do ID. So what we are checking here is if this to do ID is not the same as the to do ID that is coming. Okay, return the rest array. Okay, return the rest to those and take away this array that is coming. So if it's not the same, take it out and return the rest and set it to this what to do list. Do you get it now? So that's what we are doing. As long as the ID does not matches, then we are going to take that out. We're going to filter it out and return the rest. Okay, so that's what this function is doing. Okay, so that means for the remove to do, we'll need the ID and we're passing it later as what, as a payload. Do you get it? So the next one is we want to do the what, the next case, which is complete. Okay, actions dot complete to do. So if the action is complete to do, if the type is complete to do, what do we want to do? Now the same thing, we'll return an object. All right, we'll get the state. Then what we did as well, we'll set the list, but this time we are not filtering, we're not using the filter method. We want to map through. We'll map through all the to-dos. Okay, so let me, first of all, we'll use the map state.todo. Then we are mapping through to the to-do array to get each to-do. Now, like what we did earlier, but this time we want to check if the to-do.id is the same thing, so it's equal to the action dot payload. Here we will use the ternary operator on it. Okay, so if this condition is true, what do we want to do? We want to return an object of the a payload. Okay, then don't forget we have in the payload we have complete status, which is we have completed, which is false. We have completed time. So this completed, now if the action is complete to do, that means we want to complete the to do. We want to set this completed to be what, to be true. Now it was false, we want to set it to be true. So what we'll do is we'll take the completed, we want to set it. Okay, so now we'll now set it as what, as true. So whenever you click it, it turns this towards from false towards to true. Then the time, the completed time, so when you click this, it's going to create a new time for us. So we have completed time, we'll create a new date method and get the to, sorry, let me do this. All right, so we'll get the time from it. All right, so this will be the time that it was what, completed. Now what if this condition is not correct? What if it's not true? So because we are using ternary operator, if this condition is false, if it's not true, what do we want to do? We want to return the to do. All right, so that will be that. Okay, so that's all for this function. Okay, so that's all for it. So now what if these conditions are not true, all of them? What if the type rather is not action.add to do, we are not removing to do, we are not completing the to do? So now we'll not do what, the default will return, the default state will be, we'll return the what, the initial state. That will be the default. By default we'll return what, the state. So if the types are not if it's not add, if it's not remove, if it is not complete, we'll return what, the state. Okay, so now we are done with the to-dos reducer. So the next thing we want to do now is we'll need to create what, our provider. Okay, we need to create our provider. All right, So we'll export to those provider. Okay, then it takes in a parameter which is called the children, right? Which is called the children. Now this is where we'll now make use of our useReducer. So cost state the dispatch, then useReducer, which takes in what? Now we'll now pass in what? The to-dos reducer that we've created and the initial state. Okay, so is that all? No, that's not all. Now we'll return the to-dos context that we created. We'll return this context that we created. This context that we created, we'll return it. So we'll return to-dos context dot provider. Now it takes a value which will be value. Now we've not created this value, so that's what I want to do. I want to create the value now. So create a constant and say value. Now this value is going to be an object, right? So the first thing I want to pass in will be the to-do list, so I don't forget that. So it becomes what? State dot to-do list. Don't forget this state. This state is the same thing as the initial state, right? And because of that single fact, we want to set our to-do list to be this to-do list that we have here. Do you get it? So now we state dot to-do list to get the array here of all the to-dos. So what we'll do, that's what I'm doing here. So that's why I said state dot to-do list. So the next one is we want to start passing our function. So the add to do, I'll call this add to do. So now because I want to pass my function here, so now this add to do, what it does is it's going to take the to do. Okay, it's going to take what? The to do. All right, so it's going to take the to do as a parameter. Now this is where we'll now make use of our dispatch, okay, dispatch method. Now this dispatch takes in what? The action, like I said earlier. An action takes in what? Type, right? Takes in type and what? And payload, right? So the question is, for this action we want to dispatch, what will be the action type? Now the action type will be what? We'll now go back where we declare our actions. So because we want to perform add to do, the action type will now be actions dot add to do. Okay, so we'll come here and say actions dot add to do. Now our payload will now be the to do that we are getting. All right, that we are getting. Okay, so whenever we call this function, we'll take the to do as what? A parameter, and we'll set it to what? To the payload. So when we call, when the function runs, it's going to run everything that is here. Okay, so that's in. Now the action type will now be what we've declared before, which is add to do. Then the to do will now be action dot payload. Okay, so Now the next one is the remove to do property. Okay, I'm using can make snake case. The remove to do. Okay, so the remove to do, the same thing. It's going to take a function, but this time it's taking what? The to do ID, because it needs the ID, because we need what? The ID of the to do that we want to remove. So we'll also dispatch an action, and this time the type will be what? Type will be actions dot remove to do. No, not complete. Remove to do. Okay, then we'll take our payload. So the payload will become what? The ID that we are getting. Okay, to do ID. Now the next thing we want to do is, which is the last thing, which is the complete to do. Complete to do. Okay, for the complete to do, it's also going to take in what? And going to take in a function as well, and also going to take the what? The to do ID as well. Then the same thing, okay, but this time we are going to dispatch an action, which the type will be actions dot complete to do. Okay, and our payload will be, our payload will be to do ID. Okay, so I think that will be all for our value. Now we need to pass in the children here. So we'll save this. So what did we do here? First thing we did was we imported our useReducer, then our create context from React. So we created a constant to do context itself, create context, we left it empty. Now we export it so that we can use it outside. Okay, then we created an initial state that's actually the initial state of an object that takes inwards a property whose value is what? An array. Okay, empty array. So we created our actions, because why? The actions will be needed by the dispatch method to dispatch some actions. Now if we want to add to do, we created an action type here. So this is not taking the payload. These are the types: the add to do, remove to do, complete to do. So we created a to do reducer that has state and action. So the action type, now we use switch here because we want to be doing if x and if x. Okay, so if the type is add to do, it's going to perform all this. If it's remove to do the same thing, to filter out that particular to do with that ID. Then if it's complete to do, it's going to set the completed to be true. Then complete time, we're going to create the complete time. Okay, completed time rather. So I think that's all for this. So what we'll do now is we'll go to our app.js. We'll go to our app.js and wrap everything here with to-dos provider. Now you can see it's already here, to-dos what provider, so that we can have access to it in any component that we have. Okay, don't forget that we are trying to use the we are using the to-dos, we are using the useContext to avoid props training. So by wrapping our app components with the to-dos provider, any component that is inside this, we have access to it without using what? Props. Do you get it now? So that's why I'm doing this. So what you do is just wrap the to-dos provider. Don't forget that we've exported it. All right, that's why we export it, so that we can have access to it here. So just wrap it, then you have any components, we have access to the value inside it, to the value, actually, to this value, the values that are here. Any component you create, you have access to these values without passing it as what? As a prop. So that's the idea. Okay, that's the idea of using what? useContext. Okay, without using props, we can have access to those values as well. So when I save it, now let's start creating. We should not start creating our add to dos. Okay, So not this. So for this video, I will do add to dos.js. Now this is a new component, add to dos. So what we'll do, the first thing is I like importing, don't mind me, even though it will work without import React from React, even though it's going to work, but I just like doing it. It's something I'm used to. Okay, so what will I need here? What we'll need, we'll need the, I have to import useContext, destructure it. We'll need useContext hook from React. We'll need useState. Yeah, we'll need useState. We'll need useState. Then we'll need, we have to import the to-dos context as well. Okay, now what I like doing is to export my components immediately so that I won't forget. Export default. Export default function. So your component must start with capital letter, add to dos, add to dos. Okay, so let's create a state first for the to do. Set to do is equal to use state. Now we'll make it an empty string. Okay, make it an empty string. And the next thing we want to do is we want to make use of, we want to destructure the add to do, not this. Okay, let me leave this first. We'll use the useContext. Then we'll now pass in the to do context inside it. Okay, now from here we can destructure those values. All right, the values that we have. Okay, we now have access to the values here. So what we need here for this is just the add, to do that we need. Now when I say the values, I'm talking about this values. Okay, the value, we now have access to it. Okay, so what we need here is just the add to do that we need. Okay, this function here. So add to do. So we already gotten that. We'll structure it from this. So the next thing we'll do is let's return a JSS. Okay, we'll have a div and a class name of add to do. Now very quickly, you'll be surprised I'm using class name as camel case. Why? Because in JavaScript, class is referred to as what? As a special keyword, as a keyword. Okay, so we don't make use of class, instead we make use of what? Class name. So that's why I'm using class name and not class. All right, so let's continue. So what we want to do, we want to add to do. We already created a state. All right, so need, okay, we'll need an input. Type text. Okay, let me give it placeholder of add a to do. Right, we don't need comma. So the next important thing is a method on change. Okay, so we want to set the state. So whenever you are typing it, to be setting the state of this to do. Now it is empty, so I want to get the event.target.value, the value of the input. Okay, we are getting the value of the input and we are setting it towards, to this to do. Okay, using what is set to do. Okay, we are getting the value and we are setting it to this what to do. So do you understand now? And this set to do is going to take a value. Okay, that will be what automatically be what, as you are typing it, okay, this method, as you are typing it, you'll be setting the value of the to do that you are, of the inputs, and setting it to this what, to this to do that we have here. Okay, so that's the work of this set to do, to be getting the value of the inputs and setting it to what, to this to do that we are right now. The state of this to do is what, is empty. So the value of your state as you are typing it, okay, it will be what, it will be changing and setting it to this to do that we have here. So that's work of what, use state and the set to do function. So the function takes this value and sets it to this to do. All right, so now that's that. So we'll need a button as well, a button that will perform the, that on click of that button is going to perform a function that will add the to do. So we'll put it in the callback function. Actually create a callback function. So we'll say add, we'll call this add to do that we have, right? This add to do. Now don't forget, this add to do function that we created is expecting what, the to do as a what, parameter. Can you remember? You should. Is now this to do, this is parameter, this to do that we are having, we are getting from here. Okay, this add to do is taking it as what, as parameter. The value is already there inside. So when we go back to our to do context, you'll see that this is the same to do that we are collecting now from the add to do component. So this function is taking this to do. This to do is the same to do. This to do is the same to do. It's the same to do that we are having here. You can see it's the same to do. So so that's that for the add to do. For the add to do. So what we want to do, we want to navigate, when we are done, we want to navigate to the to do that we are not, the to do this thing, the to do component that we want to create, that will create. So let's say to do list. So you have to use navigate. We'll make use of the use navigate hook. So we import use navigate, use navigate from React. So I'll instantiate it here, cost navigate equal to use navigate. Okay, so this will be all. So let's see what we have in our browser. Let's go to our browser and check what we have. So this is our browser. Let's refresh. Oh, I've not imported it. We have to import it. Sorry, I have to import it. Okay, so let's import it. So go to our app.js, we'll import the add to do's. All right, so if we go to our browser, okay,